I'm Rasmus from the go-to-market team, and with me I have Daniel, our CEO and co-founder. Today we're going to give a live demo of our product, and we would really appreciate if you ask questions throughout the demo. So please use the Q&A functionality. For those of you who are new to QA.tech, we're building an agentic QA testing service. So today QA teams use our service to increase their capacity. It's almost like having an external team of QA assistants ready to work around the clock. Engineering teams use our service to no longer having to write test code or maintain test code. So this means that we're somewhere in between manual QA and test automation, like Playwright. So it's really a new solution to QA testing. And Daniel is going to give us a live demo of the product now. So please, again, use the chat functionality to ask questions. I will be moderating and keeping my eyes open for questions, and then we'll go through them whenever you ask them. Warm welcome, everyone.
Sounds good. So I'll give a quick brief intro to the product as well before we dive into the test creation. But there are a few main screens in our product that I'm going to refer to throughout the presentation. So this is the dashboard, and everything that the main concept in our product is test cases. So this is the test cases view, and these can be created by us or created by the agent. We can suggest these for you as well based on your product. And then another more important view is the result view and the test case execution view, where you can look at the test case that has been executed or watch it in real time as it's being executed. And then we also have the edit view, where we're going to spend some time today, where you can tweak and work with your test cases to make sure they do what you want them to do. So right now I'm just signing on a demo project. This is what you get if you sign up as you by yourself on our product on our site today. So this demo project is an example CRM product that we have built just to showcase the product. So it has it's supposed to mimic something like HubSpot, but it has a few concepts like the dashboard, the customers. You can create customers. It has some companies, deals, and reports. And today we already have some test cases set up. So we have some simple things for the dashboard, some customers, and some companies. Well, what we can see right away here that we're missing test cases for the report section. So here we can use this suggested test, or we can just create our own. But I will focus on creating your own this time, because what we see is that most of our customers, they have a clear understanding about a few test cases that they really want to test themselves. And then this is a good way to start with this, create your own. And then you can, once you have seen that working out well for you, you can use our suggested test cases to improve your test coverage for the things that you might not think about yourself. So, for example, let's take a report creation. And the goal of this test should be create a new report called, let's call it webinar report, followed by the current date and time. And the expected result here is that we should show a report screen. We don't even have to write this in, but this is optional. We're going to omit it for now. But in some cases, you might want to check for a specific thing to show up or something that the agent won't figure out by itself. But in this case, kind of self-explanatory that you should get a report.
Daniel, could we briefly look at the report functionality in the web app that we're testing?
Yeah, of course. Good point. So here, this report functionality, it looks something like this. New report. Here you can go in and create your own report. And for the sake of this test, we should probably call it like webinar report by Daniel. And I can add some data sources here. So let's say I want to create a report of the deals. And I have the date range here. And let's add some other things, meetings, maybe status, active, and let's search for a location here. Yeah, so this is just like a kind of like a fake thing, but it kind of showcases how it would work, and it
It's an
shows this report.
exactly
Yeah, exactly.
like an example product that we built for a demo version of our product, or rather to
Yeah,
have something to demo our product on.
exactly. And if you think about like if you were to automate a test case like this in Playwright, it has a few different things that can be a little bit complicated. Some pieces are simpler, just writing or filling out the field. That's quite simple. But then we have these kind of components where you need to search as you type, and you can select multiple things, and that kind of changes the whole DOM, and then you need to watch for changes and change that accordingly. So it's not a trivial thing to set up in a Playwright or Cypress or Selenium setup. And if you do this manually, of course you can do that, but then you have that, it took me a few minutes just to go through that, but I don't have to do that every time. It adds up. But in our product here, we just use this goal, set no expected result. There's a few other things you can configure as well. You can configure it to run after another test. This is useful, for example, if you have a login that protects your product, or if there is some other kind of entity that needs to be created before you can run this test. You can also add configurations to this, and these are basically any kind of data you want to attach to this. And if this report needed some kind of file to be uploaded, for example, you can add that. But we're going to keep it simple, just to have the name, report creation, and the goal. And I click to generate test. And what's happening now behind the scenes is that I will try to fully complete this test case and fill out all the data it's missing. So as you can imagine, when I showcased how to create a report, it took a bunch of clicks and some actions related to that, but we didn't have to give that specific instruction to the agent. So now it will start generating this. This usually takes a little time, but we can look at it in real time as it's trying to figure it out. So here it starts out with. So what the agent only knows this right now. It has the goal that it tries to fulfill. So it opened the browser, it navigates to the report section, and here we can see the reasoning. And the reasoning is very important here, because this is what will help you to figure out if the agent ever does something wrong, and how to tweak that accordingly. So here it says, I need to create a new report called webinar report with the current date, blah, blah, blah. Based on the screenshot, I can see that we're currently on the dashboard page, and I need to navigate to the report section to create the report. That makes sense, right? But let's say the report section was called something else or hidden where this agent couldn't find it, then you might have to add, some kind of context or a better prompt to make sure that the agent actually understood how to get to that page. We're going to showcase that as well. And here you see it ended up on this page. You can, in this view, it's easy to go through here. You can see what it did in like a very detailed manner. So you can see it moved mouse to new report and then actually clicked it. You see it corresponding with this kind of icons on the screenshot as well. You can also see the before and after state of this page. And if there were any console error or a network's request here, you can also see that in real time if you need to. And it continues to go through here. It ends up on this report page. It starts to fill this out. And here you see it moves, clicks, and it types. And to the left here, you see it's generating test steps. And test steps are the more detailed instructions that goes into this test case. So once this test has completed the first time, it will have generated all these steps. So at the same time we look at this, I'll just open a new tab to just show a test case with steps on it. So here, let's add a new customer. Here you see we already have some steps generated. And this is how it's going to look on this view as well. But as you can see now, it has entered the report name, and this one was the simple part, right? Then we get to the data sources, and it's randomly picked meetings. So here as well, the agent takes its own decisions. But if you want to have a test case that is specific for report creation of a meetings report, for example, then you would need to add those steps accordingly. Or you can do as I did and just have it very open-ended. And that means that the agent might take different options every time it runs the tests. And this is sometimes desirable and sometimes not desirable. So if you want to have this very fine-grained control about what it tests, then you should write your test cases like that. But if you prefer to have it more open-ended, then you can also argue that you get more test coverage because it will pick different options, and over time you will be able to find a lot of edge cases or combinations or options that you didn't think about automating. So we usually suggest that you add a few of these open-ended tests and have those as part of your larger test suite. But if you want to have some more like smoke tests, then you can be very specific and always test the same thing if you have like one crucial flow that always needs to work the exact same way. So we see here, it scrolled down to the submit button, and it filled out the report, and it went to the report page, and it looked good, and it deemed that it was successful. So it says, I reached the bottom of the report. I have confirmed that the report has been successfully created with the name webinar report as specified in the test case. The report contains comprehensive data, including monthly performance charge, revenue, and so on and so on. I can now finish the test. Here, you see we're testing that the report creation functionality works. We are not testing any like data integrity. We're not testing anything like that. We're just making sure that it loads and behaves as you as a user would expect. To be able to make sure that these values actually make sense or are correct, there's a few ways to go about that. You can either prompt it as well and make sure that the data that you're seeing on the first screen is the same as on the second screen, or more likely you would probably cover these kind of data inconsistency things lower down in your testing like hierarchy. So it might be unit test, or it might be integration test for those services, or wherever you check your data consistency. That should probably not happen this late in your testing setup. But so that's we usually use a combination of that. So we have a lot of unit tests for the simple stuff and for computational stuff, and then we use these more end-to-end AI tests for making sure that everything looks and behaves well for the users.
Daniel, we do have a question.
Nice.
Yeah, it's you kind of answered it, but maybe you can elaborate a bit. So can the tool confirm the output from the test? In this case, the data in the report. So the result is correct, not only that it creates a report.
Yes, exactly. Like kind of what I was talking about before. And if you think about this like this, like if you hire a QA tester, like will they be able to see that this is correct? And if I just look at this myself, like I don't really know if it's correct because I don't really have that insight. The only way for me to know that is if I have some kind of access to the database or the underlying data in some way, which is something you can test, of course. We allow that you can write specific steps here when this is generated. It takes some time for some reason. Okay. Then you can also have this agent called custom tools, and the one tool then could be fetching the data from the database, but that is something that you would need to like provide in some way, or like have an endpoint or some other view that their agent could fetch the actual values from to make sure that it corresponds to the same values in the UI. And let's see here now. Now we have some steps here generated. Navigate to reports, click on a new report, enter the report name webinar report followed by the current date and time, select meetings, and click on the create report. All of this sounds good, right? But let's add something else here, like pick, what did I say? Vasastan, Stockholm from the location widget. And let's also add something else, like write a custom SQL query in the SQL field. And then I can drag and drop this around which order I want. So let's put them here. And I can just save and run this again. Then this will run from the top to make sure it all works out. And this is kind of how I would go about this, continuously tweaking this until I get like the result I want. So this usually takes a little bit of time, and we usually do 2 or 3 of these in parallel, just so we don't have to look at this running every time. Another good way to speed this up is also to use what I was talking about before, like the dependencies. So if you have a lot of test cases that are long, that are chain functionality, you can have one test case that first creates the entity and another that edits entity, and one that does something else. So you don't have to do every step as part of every test case.
I have a question, Daniel. So here we're looking at you creating a new test, and the end goal of that is to have a test that's part of our test suite. Are there any differences to how the agent then will run the test when it's an actual test kit that has been created? Yeah, that's my question.
Not really. It's more or less the same. The only thing is that we leverage a lot more caching when we use the run the tests for real, so they run a little bit faster. In this mode, we use less caching just to be able to handle changes better. So here you can see now it's following my new steps. It goes through the meeting, and now we should probably soon end up at it's trying to pick Vasastan Stockholm from the map widget. And I just took this map widget as an example of something else that is usually quite hard to automate with Playwright or any other testing tool like that, because it is behind the scenes, it's like an iframe, it has its own event handlers and so on. And since our agent actually interacts with websites much, not like on a programmatic level, but much more like a user would, it actually moves the cursor around the screen, it hovers things and presses the button rather than like clicking on a specific DOM selector. It enables us to test a lot of more these kind of widgets or embeds in the third-party services as part of your regular testing flow as well. And this is something that we also feel that we really want to solve with QA.tech, that we want to test things as close to how the user experiences it as possible. So here you can see it has been able to figure out Vasastan in this search ahead.
It now, as part of the test steps, it now added select meetings. Could I make it more random or broad by changing the step in any way?
Absolutely. You can just have this select data source. Like the data source from the drop down, and something like this, for example, select a data source from the drop down and fill in the fields necessary. And here, since going back to this SQL thing, since our agent is backed by all these large language models, it has knowledge about a lot of things around in the world. So you don't really need to tell it, like give it mock data and so on, because it's very good at figuring these things out by itself. We asked it to write some SQL, and it just came up with this by itself. So here it said, it was actually bad SQL for that reason. Yeah, we should have been more clear that it had to be SQL probably. But then you see, this worked out as well. It's evaluating the result right now. But whenever I'm happy with this test case, like I gotten this to a working state, I would just activate it here. And what happens then is that this becomes part of my test suite. So whenever I run my whole test suite, this test will be part of it. I can even add a new scenario for that and move it into there. So I have it organized. We also have this concept called test plans that makes it easy to organize some tests together. So let's say I have my GitHub Actions tests, only the most critical. And then I could, for example, I will add some test cases that are super important. For example, my report is absolutely important. So then go to dashboard case. So then I can trigger these cases individually from the whole test suite if I only wanted to run them by itself. Short mention about the other concepts as well. So I briefly mentioned configs. Like I said, we could add different kind of data to a test case. So it can be different user roles and so on. This is very commonly used by our clients to make sure that like an admin user can see some parts, I can do some things in the system compared to like a customer user. We also provide email addresses that tests can use if you have a test case for creating a new sign up or creating a new user, and it needs a new email address every time. And you can also access that email inbox here. So if you have a test case that sends out, or have a functionality that sends out from emails, you can access them here and render them. And the agent, of course, also have access to these. Another good thing to be aware about is the project context. So if you have some rules that are specific to your organization or your project that runs throughout the application, you can just write that here, like never select Saturday or Sunday. There will be no data on those days, or something like this. Yes, that's kind of the brief overview. And overall, like, we also have our documentation on docs QA.tech, where we have some more in-depth details about how to create test cases and how to prompt around with it. But usually what works out well is just having short, concise prompts about what you want it to do. And if you ever run into a problem where you feel like the agent is doing something stupid, then your best place to look is at this reasoning instruction and try to figure out how can you be more specific to make sure it does exactly what you want it to do.
I have one question, Daniel.
Yes.
So obviously there's some complexity in this report functionality. If you pick a data source, then some fields will appear, and with other data sources there will be other fields, and then the map and whatnot. But how would this service work on like a really complicated product?
Overall, I mean, think about it as like, how well would a random user be able to use that product? So if the product contains like a lot of information or like help text and so on, then, or if it's a very common type of product, like say an e-com, like then most people already have a great understanding about how an e-com works, like they all are more or less the same, right? But if it's a more complicated product for like specific kind of business case where you need to have a lot of prior knowledge about the different terms and so on, then you would use this project context, or you would probably need to be a bit specific to tell it like this is what this refers to. If you have something very specific for some specific industry that might be needed. But it's usually very easy to spot, because then you see the agent, it will make weird choices, and then you can look at the reasoning for it, and it will probably try to be creative because it doesn't understand it.
Got it.
Yeah.
And maybe we can talk just briefly about how to run the test cases. You can run them from the UI.
Of course, yeah, that's a good point. So you can trigger them all through here by just clicking run tests, or if you have set up a test plan, it's the exact same thing, but that test plan. And then what most of our clients actually do is, of course, they set up this on a schedule. So they have both a setup where they do like a nightly test run of all the regression tests, and you connect it to your GitHub Actions or other kind of CI pipeline.
Got it. Do we have
Yes.
any questions in the audience?
Awesome. If you have any questions that you think about after this, just feel free to reach out to us. We are available on email. I think that's everything from me today, unless we have any more questions.
We do have one.
Nice.
Okay, the question is, any ideas regarding capturing requirements automatically from test cases?
If requirements, do you mean more like what the expected results, or like what you want the test cases to be, or depends a little bit on that, I would say. So I wasn't going into detail about that, I guess, but you can add a lot of things like with steps here, like add some verify steps, verify that the report is looking good. But then, of course, this could be as specific as you want. If you have some kind of business rules that something should always happen, something should always be present, some element that should always behave in some way. That should be added here.
We also have the expected results.
Yeah, exactly. So this is more like to verify that each step is like actively or correctly interpreted, and the expected result is more like validating if the test was successful when it has reached its goal. So yeah, exactly. It's some good. So the page should contain a user avatar, or it could also be like it should never show any type of error message. So if like, or it should never contain any mixed language, or it should never take more than 5 seconds to load. It should be anything like that.
Okay, great. Any final questions?
I guess that's
Cool.
it. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.